Good evening. Everyone can hear me good? We're good? Oscar, how's the... All right. All right, so we'll get started. People file in, they file in. I know there's hopefully a nice audience online watching us as well. So for those who don't know, my name is Brendan Carty. I'm a member of the Board of Education. I'm the chairperson of the Communication Committee, which is responsible for putting this event on tonight. I'm joined here up on the dais by our superintendent, Mr. Terry Dade, our assistant superintendent for business, Harvey Sotland. And I want to go through a bit of a presentation just to give you an update on where we are in the planning process, some of the projects that are being considered, and what we're looking to get out of tonight's meeting. So to start, can everybody see this, by the way? I know I'm like maybe a little awkwardly positioned. Everybody can see it? Okay. So just to give a sense for, kind of a catch-up for those that maybe missed the last meeting or don't understand just exactly how the process is going. The capital project is being formulated on two fronts. The Facilities Committee is doing the bulk of the work for figuring out which projects would be included in the actual proposal to the community. The Communication Committee is holding events such as these, doing other outreach efforts to both keep the community up to date and also take in their input, bringing it back to the Facilities Committee, which uses that to then tailor the project in a way that reflects what the community is really looking for. So right now, the Facilities Committee, we're at the point where the Facilities Committee has been meeting every other week for the last 3 months, doing just that, defining the project scope. We started off with a lot of different options, a lot of different avenues that we could go down, and now we're getting closer to a point where the Facilities Committee will soon be able to make a recommendation to the larger board. As of last meeting, the Facilities Committee had narrowed the project to a $23 million scope. And that's an important target number because that would allow the project to proceed without raising taxes. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but for those who may not have heard the explanation before, the reason we're able to do that is because we have a fully funded capital reserve fund. We have $5 million in a capital reserve fund. We created the reserve fund 3 years ago. It has been funded each year since. It was capped at $5 million, so we can't fund it any more than it is now. But that $5 million serves as the community's share of the capital project. So every capital project, you get a certain amount of state aid, and then the community has to kick in as well. Usually that means some sort of increase in taxes, but because we have the $5 million in the capital reserve fund, that serves as the community share. The rest would be funded by the state, so we could fund a $23 million project without any increase to taxes. Last step for the Facilities Committee will be to meet one more time this upcoming Tuesday. That's the 21st. After that meeting, it will prepare its final recommendation to the full Board of Ed, which will be delivered, that recommendation will be delivered in early January. At that point, the Board of Ed will discuss, debate, and vote on a final proposition, which is then going to be put on the ballot for May. All right, so what does the current recommended scope look like? I'm going to have a more detailed breakdown of some of the individual projects, but just for broad strokes here. Building repairs, there's $6.7 million allocated. Mechanical, like boilers, things like that. Plumbing, electrical, that's $4.7 million. Athletic facilities, $8.4 million. That would be the multi-sport athletic complex. And then site work, so pavements, parking lots, things like that, would be $3.2 million. That total is 23. Just a word on the athletic complex, athletic facilities right now. You may look at that and say that's a pretty high number. It's just difficult to do an athletic facility for less because these facilities are kind of like all in one. You either do it or you don't. So that's why the 8.4 is pretty closely tied to just what that one multi-sport athletic facility would be. Now, if you wanted to arrange this chart a slightly different way, you could fold in repairs and mechanical, plumbing, electrical into upgrading infrastructure, and you see that it's 11.4, 8.4, 3.2. The reason I'm shuffling the deck here like that is because when we put out the capital project survey back in, I guess, October, we asked the community to rank 3 different kinds of projects, and it was categorized like this: upgrading infrastructure, athletic facilities, and site work. And now that we have the results of that survey, we're able to track how that measures against the allocation in the actual project. So upgrading aging infrastructure got 76, take a step back, we asked people to rank which projects or which kinds of projects they would like to address in order of priority. 76% said aging infrastructure was the most important. 21 said athletic facilities, and then site work, again, pavement, things like that, was at 3%. So you bring those allocation numbers back in, and you see that it tracks what the community was looking for. Not perfectly, admittedly. 11.4 is not 76% of 23, but as I said before, with the athletic projects, it's, 8.4 is the cost of just that one facility, so it's hard to get that down. It's kind of either you do it or you don't. Now, I referenced earlier, part of the goal of the facilities committee was to narrow the project scope. So we started off with quite a few projects to consider. So the question is, well, what happened to those projects that are not included in the current scope? Several of those projects, before I go into a little highlights, I would recommend, if you have time, going to the video of the last facilities committee meeting, because our director of facilities, Walter Moran, offered a very detailed roadmap for each one of these. And he went through literally project by project, saying how we could fund it or tackle it without it being on the bond. But just as a high level, several projects would be addressed in-house by Buildings and Grounds. Talked about potentially bringing on some more skilled labor that could address some of those in a very cost-effective way. Several of the mechanical devices, like those boilers, were deemed to have a few years of usable life remaining. So, what ends up happening with these kinds of things, the usable life will be like 15 to 20 years, and you're at year 18, and you say, well, technically we are getting to the end, we should replace it. But upon further inspection, Walter went through every building, every one of these, and determined which ones are still in good working order because they've been maintained well, and determined that we could get another few years out of them. They wouldn't need to be replaced immediately, so those became slightly less critical needs. And then some projects like site work, again, pavement, parking lots, would be addressed in a future capital project. This goes, just 2 points on that. When we go back to the survey, site work was listed as the lowest community priority. So when we had to make a decision, which of these projects that we don't have a direct path to either do in-house or push down a couple of years to do to get more usable life out of, let's say, we had to resort back to, well, what does the community really want? And seeing that site work was a clear third, that became one of the deciding variables to remove some of those from this capital project in favor of the others. But to be clear, a future capital project could be something similar to this, where we start a capital reserve fund, save money, fund that reserve fund, and come back a few years from now with the ability to run a similar project. All right, so we talked in broad strokes. I'm going to keep this slide up while we're talking, so you don't have to absorb everything. I don't want to bore you with every single line, but just to give you an idea of what would be covered under this scope, some of the highlights, the middle school and all 3 elementary schools would get completely revamped bathrooms. I know this has been a big issue for years, not just the exteriors, but the actual plumbing and water lines, everything underneath, the things that are so difficult to do. That would be replaced again at every school except the high school. There would be extensive water mitigation projects at different schools, which is critical, has outsized value. I think every homeowner knows you have to stop water from coming into your buildings. If it does, then that's kind of poison on the rest of the structures. So being able to solve those issues would have great impact on the integrity of the buildings. And then things, every window at COH would be replaced. It's a very old building, very old windows. A lot of masonry work that has been necessary for years would finally be addressed. So again, I'll keep this up. I'll go back to it in a second so it's up there. But and there are some highlights also on the handout that we had at the door. Okay, so what are we looking for tonight? Similar to the first forum, we want to answer your questions, gather your input. Some of the things you might find coming out of you or your neighbors' mouths. I have a few opinions about the athletic fields. Sure, people do. That's why we're here. Can you tell me one more time how this wouldn't raise taxes? We would be glad to do that. When would this work begin? Or maybe just, this is amazing, I can go to sleep happy, see you on May 17th, go Dragons. That would also be an acceptable comment. All right, so with that, I'll keep this up here. I want to open it to public comment. I have one letter that I want to read. It was submitted by a community member. So I want to start the public comment period by reading that letter. After that, we'll do it like this. Richard and Tom will be responsible for handing out microphones. So if you just raise your hand, just be sure when you speak into the microphone. We want the people at home to be able to hear, and just state your name as you start. All right, so I'm going to read that email, and then we'll get started. This is where my planning falls apart. I didn't have the email ready. All right. So this is from Rob Kirkpatrick, community member. And to be clear, it is a rather long email. So to Mr. Kirkpatrick, if you're watching, I'm gonna edit on the fly just to, for sake of clarity and length. I will not remove anything that's critical though. So I am a resident. This is about turf fields. So I am a resident of the Cornwall School District, the proud father of a young soccer player, youth soccer player, and a lifelong sports fan. I write because I understand the district is considering the installation of synthetic turf fields as part of its upgrades to our athletic facilities. I want to convey my deep concern that the district is considering this, and to explain why installing turf fields would be a grave mistake for our children and our community. I understand from speaking with a local soccer coach that I am not alone in my concerns. Today's synthetic fields are made from so-called crumb rubber, which consists of toxic industrial waste, literally ground up material from old tires. We also know that such crumb rubber fields spew pellets of this toxic material upon contact. These black dots have been found to be ingested by athletes playing on such turf. In recent years, awareness regarding the health dangers of such turf has grown. One study at Yale found crumb rubber material contains up to 20 carcinogens, and a CBS report illustrated how easily contact with this turf can spew these black dots into the air. But there remains a lot we don't know. While the synthetic turf industry likes to point to short-term studies on inhalants, Faudi's report notes that long-term studies on the ingestion of such carcinogens is lacking. Many regulatory agencies agree, among them the New York State Department of Health, the Environmental Protection Agency, and these are quotes, also supporting quotes provided. The Children's Environmental Health Network in Washington, D.C. says the safety of using synthetic materials containing carcinogens for children cannot be sufficiently determined in the absence of long-term data. There are other risks as well. The Environmental Health News Report reports that synthetic turf has been found to contain these so-called forever chemicals that leach into the environment. Furthermore, the New York State Department of Health notes synthetic turf fields absorb heat, resulting in surface temperatures that are much higher than the temperatures of the surrounding air. And how did we get here? A report is cited that turf fields are not associated with either food or drugs, so they haven't had the same kind of oversight from the CDC and other government organizations. And Mr. Kirkpatrick says it all boils down to a consideration of risk and reward. The risk is considerable to health and for environmental pollution, and the claims that the synthetic turf industry likes to tout have not been supported by data. So his position is that he would hate to see our district take action to force parents choose between removing children from team activities and risking ingesting these known carcinogens during practice and games. So thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick, for the email. I have already forwarded this on to the Facilities Committee for their consideration. Thank you, Richard. And we will be asking the architect and construction partners that we're working with to give us a report on whether the fields that we would be considering would actually be these kinds of fields, and we'll have a discussion at the facility level from there. But certainly, student health is always a major concern. I don't know, Mr. Dade, Harvey, if you wanted to say anything further on that? No? Okay. All right, so now we're open to in-the-room comments. Anybody wants to raise their hand? Again, we'll have a microphone over to you, and again, just state your full name and speak into the mic, and off we go.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Matt Greavy, and I'm a lifelong resident here in the district, and I'm also a teacher here in the middle school, and I'm also the varsity boys and girls tennis coach, and that's the role that's brought me here tonight. If I could just share with you guys a copy of something I wrote. I know that one of the considered projects for our upcoming project highlights is to repair and reconstruct some of the tennis courts, and I just wanted to make sure that I came and was a voice for all of my players and alumni who would really love to see that happen. Our 6 tennis courts at CCHS are an incredibly valuable and well-used resource. They're utilized each year by upwards of 70+ student athletes on both our boys and girls varsity and JV tennis teams. As one of the only sports programs in our district that has a no-cut policy, we allow many student athletes to participate that may not play another team sport. It's used by dozens of community members and hundreds of students in physical education classes. As a lifetime sport for fitness, tennis is a fantastic activity to encourage our students to participate in. Also, over the last 10 years, our boys and girls tennis teams have been among the premier programs in Section 9, producing over a dozen county and sectional champions in singles and doubles and numerous team titles. Unfortunately, the harsh winter weather we have and time have deteriorated our courts quite badly. The cracks worsen every winter, and several of them are approaching a point where they will be unplayable because of safety. I included a couple reference pictures in the letter. Hard courts such as ours can have an estimated lifespan of 20 to 25 years if they're resurfaced every 7 to 8. To my knowledge, I don't know if they've been resurfaced in their 15 to 18-year existence that we've had so far. I do know many areas of our infrastructure need to be addressed, and that this is one of the considered projects. And I really feel that the value, not only to our school, but to our local community of these tennis courts makes them a worthy candidate for consideration. I honestly don't know what it would cost to repair or reconstruct them, but getting an expert opinion on them to look into those possibilities before they become unplayable would be terrific. It would be a real shame to lose such a great resource. So thank you for your time and your thoughtful consideration, and I appreciate you passing that along to the Facilities Committee. Thank you.
Matt, if I could just speak to that. Your depiction of the courts are spot on. They're in deplorable condition. It's just age and the settling and so forth. Just so everybody knows, the scope of the project, as Brendan had articulated here, there's this stuff up here, and then there's the athletic fields, okay? The tennis courts are in the project recommendations, regardless of what happens with the athletic fields. The point being that if we do not we have to literally redo the entire courts from ground up. If that doesn't happen, they will not be able to be used at all. It'll just stay there and nobody will be even allowed on it. There are cracks on the court that, you know, your entire foot can almost fall into it. It's that bad. So I just want to let you know, it's not part of the athletic complex discussion. It's already in what absolutely needs to be done. Okay? Sure.
Just one other point of information. In the building condition survey, the tennis courts were the only singular athletics item listed as unsatisfactory and in need of attention. So that's why it's pulled out as a separate recommendation.
I think it might still need the mute. Yeah, Oscar will get it.
Hello? Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Reggie Hilaire. Lived here for 4 years in Cornwall. Love it here. I just have a question. Does any input from the student athlete themselves of, first of all, what kind of turf the committee is going to prefer, either grass or turf? Because they're the ones that literally shed blood, sweat, and tears on these fields. I believe they should have an input because I don't play football. They do. My son plays varsity football, and between the last meeting we had, I actually went to some of the students and asked them, has anybody went to you and asked for your opinion? None of them. They all said no. I believe they have the experience. They go to other fields throughout the district, throughout the valley, and they have experience what feels good for them, what they prefer. I was recently told by my son, a captain of the football team went around to their fellow football, and they did a petition asking, first of all, to keep the football field in the middle school and to change the field to turf. They're the ones that their future depends on this. We lost a quarterback a couple of years ago, probably because of the field. Me personally, I don't care where the football field will be, high school or the middle school. It's not to me. As long as what we improve is better than what we have. I'm tired of seeing my son standing for like an hour in the cold while I can't sit down. And my daughter, 9-year-old daughter, begs me, please, I want to go to the bathrooms over there. So my first question, again, has any input, any kind of survey for the students athletes? Because I believe that's important.
So we have not asked the student athletes, turf versus grass. Turf is the only consideration that has been put before the facilities committee. That's not entirely true. I guess we did consider both at the beginning, considered everything. But because of cost, it just became a feasibility issue. So to narrowly answer your question, no, we didn't put a question to them just because we didn't really feel like we had two distinct options to put in front of them. But I don't know if Terry or Harvey want to expand on that.
Yeah, I can say with utmost confidence, turf versus natural, there's no contest. We get the information from our coaches, from our students themselves who do play on beautiful facilities everywhere else that they travel. Utmost confidence that turf is the preferred field for moving forward. We also have to realize that this is a multi-sport facility, so it wouldn't just be football that we would be asking. We'd be asking soccer, lacrosse, and football for information, so that's point one. Point two, we can't get into kind of a popularity contest of whether it's middle school as a location or high school. The danger of putting out a vote is if it's 55-45, no one wins. There's no easy path forward, so we didn't put it up for, even with the community, notice that we didn't put that as an option for it, because the facilities committee onto the board has to think of the complete package and all the things that impact one another. So there's repairs that would fall into the scope that may fall into a particular phase because of where the athletic complex is. So all of that has to be under consideration as we move forward. So that's just some of the rationale that we've heard moving forward in the process.
Hi, my name is Rich Gaylord. I've been a lifelong resident here. I've been a youth football coach. I've been a youth lacrosse coach. I've been an assistant varsity lacrosse coach. And I think we have to look at the old saying that, you know, the truth hurts. And the truth is that Cornwall has the worst facilities in Section 9. There's no doubt about it. And it's embarrassing, quite honestly. We need to turf the high school field. We need to turf the middle school field. We need to keep football at the middle school. It's always been there. It's convenient. It's a nightmare getting to the high school, but there's a lot of people that walk. And after looking at these numbers, I think the 8.4 million, you know, if you want to turf those two fields, you want to move the stands and do some other ancillary work, I think there's money left over for the baseball field to be upgraded and possibly turfed. But, you know, we have great teams. We have back-to-back state champions in football. Baseball has won Section 9 title after title. Other sports have done it. We have fantastic teams. Our facilities are a joke. And with the amount of money that we pay in taxes here, we deserve much better. And the last time in 2017, I did a lot of research on this $46 million budget that I believe was about $46 million. And quite honestly, there were a lot of things that went against people voting for that budget. You know, and I'm not going to go into the particulars because it did fail, but, you know, we need to do a better job getting this out here because this $23 million budget is roughly half of what was proposed 4 years ago. Will serve a lot of purposes in getting what needs to be done. But at the end of the day, I'm a facilities guy. I have 3 kids, 2 of them were athletes. And again, as a former coach, it has to be done. And again, we need to keep football at the middle school. That needs to be turfed. To have our concession stand that was closed down because it wasn't ADA compliant. If you've ever brought someone in a wheelchair to a football game, to a porta potty that Cornwall Youth Football pays for, it's embarrassing. They deserve better. We as a community deserve better. So I think, again, that the 8.4 million, I think you can get both middle school and the high school done, maybe even under that, upgrading the baseball field and, you know, the concession stand, for example. I think you guys need to give a green light to get a committee going that will be no cost to the taxpayers and get that concession stand done with donated money, up and running, and be operable. And that's all I have.
Okay. Hi there. Rick Joya from the Village. Lived here 30 years. My kids both went through the school system. I wrote my views in the local a couple of weeks ago, and I'll just sort of paraphrase my concerns. At this point, I'm not going to touch what is obviously deep passion about the sport of football in this community. That's undeniable. My concern is what I experience empirically as a regular walker and runner at the middle school track. And I've been doing that since back when it was a cinder field. So I think I've seen changes over the years. I've noticed in the last, not that many years ago, really much more severe flooding that happens at the north end of the field, at the concession stand, and in reading about, you know, the passions that are being raised about this, this proposed project. I get it. We've had consecutive state champs. I mean, that's not nothing. I mean, we obviously have talent, and we have dedicated parents that bring these teams to their successful conclusion. I'm worried about what I'm experiencing and seeing every time I listen to news or read the news. Obviously, global warming is real. It needs to be taken into account. And I don't know that there's been no discussion about hydrology. And the flooding that I've observed around the concession stand has gotten way more severe over the last few years. And if you just go on the other side of the hedge, you've got homes on Murray Road and on Lee Road that are even lower than the football field and the concession stand. And if you put an impervious membrane over an area that size, I mean, I'm not a hydrologist, I'm not a scientist, but my common sense tells me that that water wants to go somewhere, and it's going to go into those neighborhoods. And is the Board of Education willing to gamble with the welfare of those homeowners that pay taxes just like we all do and have a right to not be flooded because of a plan that wasn't thought through as completely as it might have been? I mean, I've gone to the track sometimes after severe rains, and even though those drains have been improved, they've dug them out, and they still overtop. If it's a real heavy rain, it overtops. It cannot absorb the rain fast enough, and that water's got to go somewhere. And that's with a permeable soil field. That's already allowing nature to absorb rainwater in the way that it has done as long as this planet has been here. So I think it's a real concern. It's not, I'm not going out on a limb here, but I'm just saying you can't ignore the reality of water. Water is number one, and it's going to go somewhere. You were talking about water in the schools. I mean, it's there. It has to be contended with, and you have to reassure the public, the tax-paying public, that by putting this membrane on such a sizable area that you're not going to impact those low-lying communities. Thank you.
Just to clarify, you know, thank you for saying that. This is one of the concerns, certainly, with, you know, it's not just about putting a turf field on either the middle school or the high school. It's dealing with all of these contingent problems, which is why the price may be higher than than the cost of just putting a turf field on there. But to be clear, the only option is it's not just being considered to put a turf field at the middle school. There's the turf field at the middle school or at the high school. So I don't want you to think that that's the only thing being planned, but certainly those kinds of contingencies are considered when making these kinds of trade-offs. So.
Brendan, if I could also add, regardless of where the field is, the detailed specs with respect to any type of an artificial turf field includes a very, very comprehensive drainage system. When you talk about a membrane being put down, surely that's an artificial membrane, but I can tell you that underneath that membrane, they're digging it up anywhere from 2 to 4 feet. There's drainage, and it actually will help that situation that you're speaking about.
Hello. Sorry, I got another question. Brendan, you said at the last meeting that the $5 million was used from the capital reserve, and that was created when?
I'll pass it to Harvey for the specifics. Yeah.
2018.
And that was, the voters approved of that, right?
Correct.
And that's being used right now.
Correct.
So once it's used, it's gone.
Correct.
Some question, can a capital reserve project could this be permanent? Because savings is a good thing, obviously. So you were saying, Brendan, once it's gone, it has to go back to the voters for another capital reserve bond. Why can't you just make permanent? Because suppose something, we use the 5 million and then something's gonna happen. Where is the money gonna come? It's gonna go to taxpayers, it's gonna go to bonds. Once the reserve is gone, what happens?
So to answer your question, the law requires you to go out with a specific limit with regards to a capital reserve. So when you go out to the taxpayers, you're essentially asking them to fund a capital reserve up to a dollar amount. The one that we did was 5 million. It could be any number. So once that's whittled down, you can't even replenish it. You have to go back out to the taxpayers to get permission to fund another capital reserve. It's something that we're certainly planning on doing.
Right, so to your point of having it being like an eternal policy, in spirit, you can do that.
Right.
If you just as an organization say, anytime we deplete it, we'll put another one in front of the voters and start contributing to that. It's just that you can't keep shoveling back into the same one.
Hi, my name is Kelly Cassie. I have several questions, but I'll pose a few and then come back later. I guess some of my concerns are from a fiscal perspective in relation to the determination of the projects. I sat through many of the meetings back in 2018 when there was discussion regarding what was to be done, what was included. And I'm just curious in terms of how these projects were determined when, in looking at the breakdown of all the necessary repairs on the website, those repairs alone, without any improvements to the athletic fields, are well beyond 23 million. The breakdown here in terms of voters and their concerns, you said 76% prioritized upgrading aging infrastructure, which makes sense to me. We can't go to school if we don't have water, we don't have heat. However, when you look at the breakdown of the cost of these projects, you're only allotting 47% to upgrades, and you're looking at 36% for the athletic facilities, which was only at 21% for the community. So it's clear to me everyone wants turf. I will come back later because my property actually borders the high school, and I would like to share more information about my experience living next to the high school and my thoughts in relation to having a multi-athletic facility next door to my home. But I will give other people a chance to talk before I do that. I just, from a fiscal perspective, as a taxpayer, and by the way, I pay a lot of taxes, the way that my money is being used or suggested to be used is not in keeping with what the public indicated to you. And I just don't understand. I do understand, but the athletic facility keeps coming back round, and it's a significant expense, which I'm going to ask you, is there state aid for the athletic facility? I know that in the previous meeting you said it's we get 75% back for state aid. Do they fund athletic fields?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, I want to respond to everything if I can when you're
Okay.
done. So, yes,
Okay.
everything that is included in the project, that's one of the parameters we set. There's nothing in the project that does not qualify for the 3-to-1 aid ratio. So everything in there we're getting 78 cents on the dollar from the state. I included a small explanation in my original presentation just about the very question you're asking, which is, why is it that if 76% responded aging infrastructure, those percentages don't completely align with the allocation. It's really to do with the fact that there's only one way to do these athletic projects, and that's through a bond, and it's hard to do them cheaper. So if we wanted to say, all right, let's take the results of the capital project survey and dice up the project exactly according to the percentages reflected in that, we would not be able to do the athletic facility at all. You couldn't, what would 21% of 23 million be? Like 4.3 million or something? You couldn't get anything done with that because these multi-sport facilities come in at around 8 million.
Right.
So you're either doing it or you're not. But to your question about other needs, another part of the, and I sorry if I'm just rehashing some of the stuff I talked about before, but we have alternate routes to do other projects that didn't make the cut for the capital bond. We can do a lot of that work internally. Some of the work, some of the boilers and things like that are pretty expensive items. We've determined we can get a few more years out of. So it's not that we have, there are some projects that have multiple routes to getting done, and we are using a whole host of options to get there. Unfortunately, the athletic complex, it's really only one route, and it's through the bond. And if we don't do it, we don't do it at all. So I've always tried to stress it throughout this process, not to look at this just as the $23 million capital bond project. This is more like a plan to address all of our needs, of which the capital bond is the biggest piece, but it's one piece. Just because it's not on the bond doesn't mean it's not being addressed.
Okay, I just from my calculations here, the community is saying to you that the athletic fields are not a priority.
I just want to address that because we tabulated these in district office, so we got to read every single postcard. So a few things, we went back and forth with how to display this data. Do we display just the first priority? Do we take first and second priority? And because the clear second priority, highest vote getter was the athletic complex. To double down on that, we asked a question also in the survey of if we can make repairs and improvements to our athletic facilities without impacting tax dollars, would you support the capital project? And it was overwhelmingly nearly the same percentage, 76% saying yes, some needed more information. But that was another question that we asked to our taxpayers.
I got the postcard, but
right.
it was...
I'm just sharing the data that they overwhelmingly said, yes, if you can improve athletic facilities without raising taxes, would you support? And they said yes.
Thank you, though. Those were good questions.
I don't want to take too much time, but my name is David Carnwright. I'm a village trustee. I'm also president of Cornwall Youth Football. I was on the Board of Education for 9 years, and I'm a lifelong resident. I'm going to read a resolution that'll be adopted by the village board on Monday night with a vote of 5-0. Whereas the Cornwall Central School District is planning a capital project to address a wide range of critical infrastructure needs, whereas the project will be voted on by the community in May, that the Cornwall School District is presenting at proposal residents, and whereas the district and Board of Education have set a goal to create a capital project with no impact to the taxpayers due to the district has saved enough money, be it its capital reserve, with New York State funding, and it can afford a capital project of roughly $20 million without increasing taxes. And whereas a part of the Capital Presentation Facilities Committee has asked residents for their input on the possibility of a plan to spend monies an estimated plus or minus $7 million to improve the football field, install turf stands, parking, lighting located at CCHS, or spend an equal or lesser amount to improve the football field, install turf stands, parking, lighting located at the Cornwall Central Middle School. And whereas 75% of the students attending CCSS reside in the town of Cornwall and CCHS being located on the border of New Windsor and close to their business district, whereas the middle school football field is located closest to the town of Cornwall Business District, as well as the business district of the village in Cornwall and Hudson, and whereas the town and village residents can walk to the middle school field, and whereas the use of the middle school will not be exclusively for football games, but for games, practices, and other sports potentially on a daily basis, and whereas the use of the middle school field can and should ensure the benefit businesses in town and village due to the improved football field facilities, increased use, spectator attendance, as well as the benefit to the town and village residents as a facility that can be accessed by walking. Thereto be it hereby resolved that the Village of Cornwall, a Board of Trustees supports the Cornwall Central School District judicious use of taxpayer funds for necessary capital projects, and be further resolved that the Village Board of Trustees finds that the Cornwall Central School District determines spend capital fund monies on improving the football field and attendant facilities, that such funds be expended on improving the football field and the attendant facilities located at the Cornwall Middle School, as the same will benefit both businesses and residents for that reason herein. Thank you.
I would like to say I agree 100%, given the fact that my property, as I said before, borders the high school property. I have brought it to the board's attention back in 2018 that when there are athletic events at the high school, people regularly trespass on my property. I have people urinating on my property. I have garbage thrown on my property. I'm all for sports. I am very concerned in terms of having a multi-use facility next to my home. The lighting at the high school is intrusive. The proposed facility is going to have more lights, more boards, more activity. The neighborhood I reside in pre-existed the high school. And so I am a little concerned that these meetings go back and forth about where we should have this facility. And in fact, none of the residents around the high school have been surveyed or asked what our experiences are. Currently, between 7 and 7:30 in the morning, one cannot even navigate out of my road onto Route 94 to go to work because of the traffic that is occurring because of drop-offs. I can look out my window and see the traffic going out from the high school backed up all the way to the school. That's just for student drop-off. The quality of life impact to those of us who live near the high school is going to be significant if the facility is located at the high school. I'm concerned about runoff from a turf field. I'm now concerned about carcinogens from the turf field. My water source, along with everyone else on my road, is a well. If we're looking at carcinogens running off of a turf field, my water source and others could be contaminated. In addition, we live near a wetland and a pond. With more runoff, we're going to have more flooding. Is our road going to be flooded? There's just a whole host of issues in relation to any kind of facility being built at the high school on top of what's already there. And so I would appreciate that this facility be located in the middle school, where many people have already spoken to say that is where they want it. Although I will say it sounds like from the last meeting that facilities committee is really pushing to have it at the high school. I, as a taxpayer and as a neighbor to the high school, do not want to live next to a multi-sport facility with neon lights shining into my home because of night games 2 out of the 3 seasons. It's not fair as a taxpayer for my quality of life or any of us living around the high school to have to be subjected to that. And so I'm requesting formally that you listen to my request. It's also a liability issue. I've asked for people to not trespass on my property, to not urinate on my property, and with more sporting events, I'm just going to have more incidences like that. And I shouldn't have to endure those things because my property borders the high school.
My name is Howard Cave. I also live on Shadowwood Lane. Kelly's a neighbor of mine, as are these 2 ladies over here. I'm going to ask first, is there a way, do you have a copy of this satellite or aerial image of the high school property that you can project on that screen? Because it would make it a whole lot easier for me to explain the issue that I'm concerned about, along with the issue that Kelly has just raised.
I don't have it as part
You
of my
don't?
presentation, no.
Okay. It's too bad. Little history. The Shadowwood Lane subdivision was created in 1984, a good 21 years before, I believe, before the high school was built. There are 6 homes on that road. It's a private road. It is the only residential property that I'm aware of that is immediately abutting the high school property. My house was built there, as all the others were, in about 1984, 85. First 15, 20 years that we had a big vacant lot there. There was a time when there was a proposal to put in 250 townhouses, which would have been a disaster in terms of water tables, but fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, the economy went into the toilet and the developer abandoned those plans, and the Board of Education decided to buy that lot, and we have a beautiful high school there now. The problem that I have, and this is somewhat touches on Kelly's problem, Joan and Kathy's problem, is if you look at this aerial photograph of what is the high school, you're going to see, can't quite see Kelly's house, it's cut off. Joan and Kathy's house is visible in this photograph. That's how close it is to the high school. John Zaz's house, John's not here, but his house is visible, as is Brian Clarl's. Those are 3 houses that are literally contiguous to the high school property. Now, I'm fairly familiar with the high school property. When my stepsons attended high school, this was the high school. And they both played football for the 1986 or 87, both years' football teams, which were not only undefeated, but I think in 86, the defense gave up all of 47 points the whole season. And one of my stepsons was the Times Herald Record Player of the Year, but since his uncle's in the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, it wasn't that surprising. In any event, if you take a look at the property, and I've walked it many times, I've got a dog I take walking there sometimes or go into the woods. For some reason, when the high school was built, the Board of Education decided to erect a chain link fence about 5 feet high that goes completely around where the baseball diamonds are, that separate the Cornwall High School property from vacant woods. I do not know what the reason for that fence was, whether it was to keep the students from going into the woods, although I understand the cross-country team regularly goes into the old railroad right-of-way and runs there, or maybe it was to keep deer off the property. I don't know. But the Cornwall Board of Education never saw fit at the time to erect a fence along the property line that separates Shadowwood Lane from the high school. And I can promise you, when I walk along that property with my dog or without my dog, I can stand right here. There's nothing but a broken down stone wall between the high school property and these ladies' house. You can literally pick up a rock and throw it through their window. You can do the same at Kelly's house. And in 2005, I believe it was April the 9th, 2005, right after the Cornwall High School opened, there was some sort of inaugural athletic event. It clearly wasn't a football game. It might have been a track meet or just an inaugural event to break in the new high school. And on that occasion, Joan and Kathy reported to me at least one or two people, young men like I was once, who decided to come onto their property and use it as a toilet. There were several cars parked on our road. I guess maybe the parking lots weren't complete at the high school, but people literally parked on Shadowwood Lane and walked through the property that Kelly now owns to get to the high school. So I wrote a letter to the Board of Education on the 11th day of April. I have copies of it that I'll be happy to leave with you gentlemen today because I doubt very much your memories go back. I don't think any of you were on the board in 2005 when this happened. It was 16 years ago. And I received a letter back from a law firm in Albany, basically telling us that if we wanted to erect a fence, of course we could, but that the high school was not, the Board of Education was not about to do that. To me, it seems incredibly absurd that you've got 2/3 of the property fenced where there is no private property owner, no residences on the other side of the fence, and yet your closest neighbors, who are the people who are here in this room, myself included, although my home is across the street. My front yard is the high school. These folks have a rear yard that is the high school. And if you walk out there, all you've got to do, and I'm sure you're all familiar with it, is go to the track, around the football field, walk up the hill a little bit, and look into their rear window. And clearly, this proposal, I don't know if a decision has been made whether or not to move football games and track meets to the high school, but the fact that this proposal includes a 1,250-seat stadium, that means that when this very successful football team plays football games on a given Friday night or whenever the games are scheduled, I haven't attended one in many years, there are going to be 1,500 people on that property. And there is no question in my mind, having been a 16-year-old boy myself at one time, that there are going to be high school students and invitees and people from the other team who maybe can't make it into the stands because they're full, who are going to stand on the other side. And they're going to watch the football game from the other side of the field. And they're going to find it very easy to just step over the stone wall. When I say stone wall, we're talking this high, not even a foot high because it's been collapsed. And they're going to be in these people's backyard, and they will be, blowing weed. They'll be urinating. They'll be leaving beer cans. They'll be doing that to Joan and Kathy. They'll be doing it to Kelly. They'll be doing it to Brian. And I wrote that letter in 2005 to put the Cornwall Central School District on notice that this was a dangerous and defective condition, and that if there was ever any problem on our side of the fence, if somebody got hurt or if one of these houses was damaged, it would be the school district who would be liable in addition to the people who caused the damage. Because it's very simple. The poet emeritus of the United States was Robert Frost a long time ago, and he coined a cliche, and cliches are well known because they're true. Good fences make good neighbors. So I rise here to ask this board, A, are we planning to move the athletic events, particularly the football games and the track meets, to the Cornwall High School? I know in the past there's been a lot of opposition on behalf of people who live on this side of town. They don't want to go through the five corners. I don't blame them. Businesses don't want to lose the draw on Saturdays or Fridays or whenever games are played. I don't blame them. But I also know there are a lot more people now living in this district on the west side. And it could just be that if there's a referendum, people will want to approve this. And it could just be that this board or the athletic department, whoever has the power to make this decision, are going to move football games and track meets to the Cornwall High School. I would say that's logical. I don't take a position on that. I just want to know that if that happens, the school district is not going to expose myself and my neighbors to this liability, and that we're not going to have to worry about this. So before I leave here today, I'm going to hand you copies of the letters that I sent to this board, its predecessor in 2005, and the response I received from your council in Albany, which got us nowhere. They basically just said, no, we're not going to build the fence, you build the fence. Well, if we're going to revisit the subject of improving the high school athletic facilities, this board had best revisit the issue of fence. I notice, perhaps you can answer this question, there's a line item in this handout that I found in my mailbox earlier this week, under site improvements. The third line down says perimeter fencing and gates. Looks like 1,500 linear feet at $35 a foot for a total expenditure of $52,500. Can any of you tell me where that fencing is going to be? Do we know?
I am not familiar with the handout you're referring to. I don't know if Harvey is.
I'm only here tonight. I wasn't given notice of this meeting by certified mail or regular mail or carrier pigeon. I opened up my rural mailbox and I found an envelope, plain white envelope. My name wasn't on it. Thought it was one of my neighbors sending me a note.
It wasn't me.
It was this. And on this was a little notice that there'd be a meeting here tonight at 7 o'clock, otherwise I would not be standing here. This aerial photograph of the property, which includes my neighbors' homes, cheek by jowl to the track, and this list of the expenditures, site work that's about to be done.
Okay.
And at the bottom, toward the bottom, perimeter fencing and gates, $52,500 for 1,500 feet.
All right, well,
I
we'd
don't
like
know
to
where
try
that's
to
gonna be.
answer, if we could try to answer a few of your questions. I'm not familiar with that line item. We didn't send that letter. It may have been someone trying to get maybe your neighborhood to come out. I do know that in the athletics complex proposals at both locations, fencing is something that we have to take under consideration to make sure that everything's protected and things of that nature. So both sites is considering fencing. Where it goes, those specifics, I'm not at liberty to say. I just don't have those details right now.
I need to understand something. Am I to understand that these two documents are not the work of the Board of Education? That you didn't authorize this?
Again, we did not.
It's interesting. I don't, how did you publicize that this meeting would be held here tonight?
So we have a school messenger system that pushes out to everyone in the district. We had a piece in the Cornwall Local. We have been doing regular social media updates. To do direct mail every time we have an event would be expensive, and as a publicly funded organization, we unfortunately can't do that every time. I'm grateful that whoever mysteriously dropped off that unmarked envelope did so, because you're standing here, but no, we didn't have anything to do with that.
All right, well, understood. The only reason I'm here,
Hey,
somebody
whatever gets them in the seats, right?
yeah,
I think
fine,
that's great.
Fine. I would at least like a representation that you will be considering erecting a fence between the high school track and the Shadowwood Lane subdivision. It's not a huge length of fence, by the way. We're talking about basically 3 building lots. And it seems to me a 5 or 6 foot fence, perhaps with signs posted at the expense of the school district, private property, keep out, no trespassing. I know it's not going to keep everybody out,
Right.
but it certainly will not invite people. Because right now, there's nothing but step over the line and you're in somebody's
No,
backyard, which is absurd.
Totally understand the concerns. I think that as Mr. Day just said, I mean, it is part of we haven't, gotten to the point of planning the project where I can tell you for sure, this is what the fence is going to look like and this is where it's going to be. But it is on the radar, and we have a facilities meeting coming up just this Tuesday, and our architect and construction group will be there, and this is certainly a question we can ask specifically to get to the bottom of. But I hear your concerns. I completely understand and empathize with them. If we had more data or details to give you right now, we would, but we're still in the planning process, so all we can say is we'll bring it to the facilities committee and make sure that your points are made.
Well, all you need to do to see the problem, and I'm sure you either have or will, is just walk out to the high school football field, just walk around the track, look at the houses next to the high school and see what separates them from the high school, and you'll see it's thin air. That's all it is.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barry Friedman. I'm the neighbor of Howard, Joe, and Kathy Kelly. And I went to the board meeting back when the high school was in the planning stage. I spoke with, I believe, the head of the board at that time. I expressed concern about having this school right next to our property. At the time, I had a young daughter, and I didn't even want people coming through. And I was assured this was going to be a closed campus with a fence all the way around to make sure that students stayed on the property. And Howard followed up and he was told, no, we're not going to do it. My daughter is she graduated high school 4.5 years ago, and there's still no fence. Saying, oh yeah, it's a closed campus, but how closed can it be when students walking, urinating, getting on property?
Hi, Rich Gaylord again. Very great points from all these people, and I sympathize with them next to the high school. But I'm just sitting here doing some simple math, and I'm thinking to myself, last graduation, we have about 300 graduates. And assuming each graduate has 4 people per family that go to graduation, it's about 1,200 people. And we had to go to Mount Airy and get bused into the high school for graduation. How on earth does the board think that we average probably 12 to 1,500 people with the opposing team coming in on a 2-lane road on 94, going into that school to watch a football game at the high school? It can't be done. You were talking about how you can't get out of your house in the morning. You know, I'm sure as parents we've all been there and stuck in traffic and whatnot. But on a Friday night going through 5 corners, it'll take you 20, 25 minutes if you leave an hour before the game starts. It's just not reality. We have the infrastructure at the middle school. That's what needs to be upgraded. Because again, simple math says you're not going to pack 12 to 1,500 people into that 2-lane road getting into the high school to watch a game. The math doesn't add up. On top of all the other issues that these people have.
Yep, Rick Joy again. So I'd like to just sort of dovetail on these points that are being made and also think back on those years when this community struggled to find a place to build a new high school. I wish it had been here. I wish they had put the extra floor up and it had been done that way, but that's not the way it panned out. We have what we have now. But I do remember that, you know, it was a hard sell, and the bonds passed or were defeated by razor margins. It would be hard to say that it had community consensus. So in any event, what I really want to get at is, you know, the community was presented with numbers, with a budget, as you're doing now. And once the shovels are in the ground, and now you're committed, you've passed the point of no return. You got to build the project. And invariably, the cost overruns become significant, especially on big projects like this. And I can remember listening to Margaret Dames and her Board of Ed, you know, repeatedly used this euphemism, value engineering, which really kind of stuck in my craw because I know what that really meant. And what that meant in real life was that we had to replace a roof after 10 years at the high school, a brand new roof. So as this goes, if this is a fait accompli and this goes forward, and then and then you have these cost overruns, do you start just cutting corners then and start doing your own version of value engineering? And what do we end up with in the end? Do we end up with something that we need to keep revisiting? I know I just spoke with a friend of mine going back to the field who lives in Hastings on Hudson, and they had a heated public debate about whether to use artificial or natural turf, and they actually ended up going with natural turf And they still spent a good sum of money to provide drainage and to make that field worthy of the level of safe play that we all want. But they spent the money in that direction. It wasn't like this knee-jerk artificial turf thing. And I'm going to also remind the community that and I mentioned this in my letter also, that, you know, the situation that the town is facing with the golf course, the runoff from the massive earth moving that's going on at the golf course, and all the flooding that's happening in the basements at Hasbrook Avenue. We don't have to go back that far. It's not a stretch to see the cause and effect. This stuff is real. You do one, it equals this. If this, then this. I mean, there's always cause and effect. And you know, we've got a rich Texan with bottomless pockets who can carve up the landscape, and he's not even bound by budgetary constraints. And this is still happening. You know, so even with all the money in the world, he's still creating an environmental hazard. And I don't know. I mean, eventually, maybe it'll right itself. I don't know. But for the foreseeable future, those people along Hasbrook are going to be dealing with a market increase in basement flooding when we have heavy storms. Water's got to go somewhere, as I said before, and I'll keep it that.
I'll just say just a couple things. So I'm actually one of those people you're talking about. I live three doors down off Hasbrook, and yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And so none of these issues are being taken lightly. I feel like everything you said about value engineering, I would endorse personally, and I think that you speak for a lot of people, almost all on the facilities committee and board. We don't want to do things halfway, knowing where that leads us. It might lower the number artificially and feel better when you put it on a ballot. It might make it easier to get passed, right? But all of these things that you're identifying, you eventually have to deal with. So that is certainly one of the principles that we're following. And I know the point was made before, you know, why don't you do both fields? Look, if we could do both fields, we would. If we could do both fields for within the $23 million without raising taxes, that would be great. And I agree that the truth does hurt, and the math, you know, sometimes doesn't agree. So unfortunately, that's what we're up against. I mean, we've gotten all the numbers from our architectural firm and construction firm. We have honed in on them. We have had 3 months of facilities meetings about this. We certainly have not seen a way to do both properly with all of these other concerns being addressed, drainage, all that, in a way that would allow us to do both fields at once. And so I wish that were the case, but it's unfortunately not. But doing it the right way has cost, and that's what we're dealing with as well.
My name is Bob Gregnano. I live in Highland Mills, but we go to Como schools. My 2 children have gone through the school district. No problem with the school district. They're doing a great job trying to fix what we have inside the schools. My concern is these people have a problem that needs to be addressed with traffic, okay? If you're going to decide to put this stadium at the high school, you can't get the people in. You can't get them out, okay? Where are the other teams going to practice? You have one turf field at the high school. Where is the soccer going to practice? Where is the girls and boys soccer going to practice if the football team's on it? And if there's a game on it that day, then what happens? You need 2 fields. You need to leave the school, middle school, as your main field. It has lights. Why are we going to spend another $1.5 million to run the electric down Dragon Drive and wherever else you want to put the lights? These people don't need to be seeing lights. We only use lights basically for a football game, and then when it gets to be daylight savings time ends. Most of the sports are over in that time frame. Transportation, it's taken care of every day. They go from the high school to the middle school to the high school. You have $8 million. Your best bet is put a field at the high school where they can practice, play soccer there, lacrosse if they need to, fix the track, make it better, and then fix the one at the middle school, drop a turf field in the middle of it, put some stands there, and if we don't have money for bathrooms, so be it, rent them. If we don't have money for locker rooms, rent them, or don't do them. We've been doing without it, and I've been coming to football games for 35 years, okay? I've been standing for 35 years. I can stand another 5, okay? It's not a big deal. Put the fields, because these coaches are going to be at a standstill. When do I get the field? Oh, you can't have the field. We got a game today. You need 2 fields, because even if you want to go to grass, you didn't do anything for 60 years. You didn't water it, and you didn't put fertilizer on it. And don't tell me about the turf fields that there's carcinogens. They've been using turf fields forever, okay? If there was a problem, why does the state let them play their state championship games on these turf fields? So that one's out, right? You need to put 2 fields. They need to practice, and they need to play games. They need the lights, they can go to the middle school. We don't need to spend any money. The Board of Ed never spent a nickel for those lights. It was done all by the youth football, for nothing. And my next thing is, none of you were on the board when we made the decision to put the school out there, but you made a promise to these businessmen here that you would leave the football games in town forever, because you took it out and put the school way out in New Windsor. But none of you remember that. I remember. And that's the one reason I voted yes, because it was staying in town. Prima, you could go at 1 o'clock in the morning and get a pizza if you wanted to after the games. That's what you need to do. 2 fields. Take your $8 million, figure it out. And it can be done, because it has been done in other places. We've done the arithmetic on it. You don't need a stadium. We need places to play games when we have bad weather the next day, or play on it. We don't need to bus to Middletown to practice. We don't need to go to Newburgh to practice, or Monroe Woodbury to practice. We need our own 2 fields. Thank you.
My name is Bishwa Chaudhry, and I hear people are pro-athletic. Just consider one more thing. I have seen and heard and that there have been occasions, due to the condition of the fields, visiting teams have refused to play on. Our field is at that level almost, the middle school field. It needs to be done. There are kids who have gotten hurt right on our field. So it's going to eventually become a liability issue. So we need to do this.
Hi, my name is Tom Keane. Brendan, when we sent out the survey, it was basically put your top priority, correct? Because
It was rank them, but yeah.
it was ranked, right? What your top priority is. And if you don't know who I am, I'm the vice president of Cornwall Youth Football. I probably worked hard as anybody to try to get the last 2 bonds passed, trying to get the athletic facilities improved. But as a parent and as a taxpayer, on my survey card, I put the facilities first, because I understand how important it is to come to school and have a nice clean bathroom that works, and the priority of that. So I think when we look at that 76%, you got to understand that. That's, it's kind of hard not to put that as number 1. So the amount of people who want the athletic fields is a lot higher than that. It's a high number. So I just want to make that, I think that's a point that we have to make, that I personally, if anything, I want to see that all the infrastructure get passed, because I understand how important that is. And with that point being made, I'm concerned that if you put it at the high school, the the football and the sports facility, sorry, I'm scared that the bond will get voted down. And I feel the infrastructure part of it is so important that we can't risk that. So you really need to understand and make sure that you put it where the community wants you to put it. I think it's extremely important to do that. I think the infrastructure is way, way too important. And I think it really have to be big consideration about where you decide to put this. If you got a high percentage of community against having it at the high school, it doesn't make any sense to put it there. Thanks.
We've come to that moment. Anybody? Dave, yep.
I'd just like to echo Bob's theory. The idea that we can't do both is just not true. At the high school, if you were to artificial turf the high school for 3 sports, you're going to have to rebuild the track. You're going to make that field out there full size in order to play soccer and lacrosse, which is bigger than what the present football field is, which means they'll have to rebuild the track. Not really sure the quality of that track. I know the quality of the track at the middle school is very high. So you would have to redo that track. Don't put lights up. Put stands for 200 to 250 people, which is basically what a competition soccer game would hold. Nobody draws the crowds that the football teams. It's just the way it is. It's no knock on soccer. All my kids played soccer, so I have no problem with that. Then at the middle school, you do an overlay of the existing field, which has been done at many schools. As a matter of fact, our architect did it at Wallkill, which is a perfect field. You use the existing footprint. You save the track, $750,000 that you save. You have lights that are now with the new heads on them, which are probably with no electric, which we have everything, would probably going to be really close to probably about $750,000 to $1 million, because there's no electric service at a high school. After you do the overlay, you have to resurface the track, but you don't have to do the track over. You resurface and spray it. Take the existing stands, either leave them and change the home side, or move them. The stands hold 400. They're 10-row, 37-foot long stands. They hold 400 people. Get a few more than that on most visiting, for most visiting games, big games. We get more people than that. Renovate the existing concession stand at no cost with in-kind services. It can be done. The Local 17 has a budget of $200,000 a year that they have to spend on schools. A lot of things were built. The dugouts were built that way. Boys and girls, I believe both of them were built with in-kind services. There's no reason why we have to spend $500,000, and that's what's in the paper, $500,000 for concession and bathrooms. We don't have to do that. That's a waste of money. Visitors locker room, team room, we need that. I mean, we have to maintain some separation, which people have made a big deal about, that we need separation between kids here and older players come to play at this field, which is a point of contention. But really the facts are that most of those kids are gone because the varsity doesn't get here till 4 or 4:30. So you might have some crossover of athletes, but that's it. There's not people wandering around the school on a Friday afternoon. And then with the bathrooms, which aren't aidable, outdoor bathrooms. Am I right about that, Harvey? Outdoor bathrooms are not aidable. I believe they're not. But anyways, you go with the park-style bathroom, which is a ready-set bathroom, which is about, for a 4-person, is about $200,000. They just put one in Wappingers in the park. It's a beautiful bathroom, and it comes on a foundation. The other 2 points I'd like to make is we had what we call apples to apples, oranges to oranges, we had almost $1 million for parking. Walter put up a $500 fence out there. Back in the day, there was no service road. When there was no service road, we had no parking problems. Lee Road holds about 200, 230 cars. The middle school holds almost 200. That's more parking. And ancillary parking on the side roads is at least another 50. So that's already way more parking that you have at the high school. The other point about that being is, what about the 250, 300 walkers you have that come? I believe that all the coaches would support this plan. In fact, we've talked to most of the coaches, and they do support this plan because it's giving something to everybody, and I believe the cost can be kept under what you've budgeted. You have to get creative to do it, and you have to tell the architects what you want, not what they want.
So I would just be remiss, I've been on the communications side for very few meetings, and that's what the purpose of tonight is to bring opinions and comments back to the Facilities Committee. The Facilities Committee I've been on with Dave and others in the room all around. These are hard decisions that the Facilities Committee has been wrestling with for months. Tune in next Tuesday because you'll hear exactly what Dave spoke about. That is, if we were to have a athletic complex that addresses all of the concerns that we've heard from community, from our players, from our coaches, and the like, what would it take? If it's at the middle school, what kind of parking would we need? What kind of locker room space would we need? What kind of stands would we need? ADA accessibility, all of that was what we asked our architect. We did the same exact thing for the high school. If parking is an issue, they came up with a design to add parking at both locations. Locker room is not needed at the high school versus the middle school. So our architects and our construction manager did just that. If we were to have everything that we needed for our athletes, our community, and the like, what would it take? There is a debate and discussion that the Facilities Committee will have on Tuesday of just that. If there's things that needs to be done other places, something's got to give. So do we believe that we shouldn't have seating for X number? Do we believe that parking could go? We've discussed traffic at the middle school. You know that there's been a lot of studies on Mailer and the amount of traffic going through there. So all of these things we have really taken seriously at both the middle school and the high school, and this will be the subject for the next Facilities Committee meeting. No decisions have been made at this time, but I do want to let the community know that we have asked our architects and our construction manager to bring us any time that we left a meeting and said, what about? That's what they were tasked with, and they went back to the drawing board and such. So on Tuesday, they're going to have updated numbers and as refined as can be, and the Facilities Committee will get to work on making the best recommendation that they can to the full board, which will go in early January.
Yes.
Just, I was curious to know what the logic was to fence in around the parking lot at the middle school field, because it seems to me that now, just imagining large crowds there, it's constricting flow of large numbers of people. Now everybody is forced to go down the path, and now we've blocked off access beyond to the dirt road. I'm just curious what the logic was for that. Thank you.
Yeah. I know, well, I'll let Terry speak to the specifics.
It was really came down to the safety of our students. During any event, I have a 6-month-old, a 1.5-year-old, a 9-year-old, dark They're running everywhere. The traffic through there is going way too fast, so we just made the call that due to the safety and close run-ins that we've had, we need to block it off. So it really came down to student safety.
So we were scheduled to come right up to this time, so, oh, sure.
He asked the question about we never talked to the kids. So we did talk to the kids. We sent out a petition to the kids, and we asked them, said, "We the Below sign support keeping football games at the middle school on Main Street. Sign it or don't sign it." 46 out of the 52 kids signed it. Only one player said he didn't want it at the middle school. 5 were absent, so we don't know how the 5 were going to vote. And 17 freshmen in JV who weren't on the max prep list were also polled, and they all voted to keep it at the middle school. So Mr. Hilaire wanted to know what the kids thought. That's what the kids thought.
Thank you for that. I would remind everybody that this is a multi-sport facility. It's not just for football, so that's, I think, an important caveat to that poll. But look, as Terry said, I know sometimes we talk about how the communication committee and the facilities committee is working hand in hand. I am cautious about communication meetings becoming facility meetings, and we talk, about specific numbers and everything. As Terry said, Tuesday night will be that debate on the facility side, so we encourage everybody who is engaged in the process to tune in on that night. It's 6:30. You can watch from the CES gym. Yeah, go ahead. We need a mic. No, that's why we have these meetings, but they're working meetings. The facilities committee cannot do any work in private, neither can the Board of Education. So every time, it's not like there's any other opportunity to get this work done. So when the committee meets, it's an open meeting, but it is a work meeting to allow as much time for them to go through the numbers, ask questions and everything themselves. But there is... Right, yeah. Yeah, you can come to the board meeting so this is a good segue because we can talk about process, what happens after this. So on the 21st, on the 20th, on Monday, the facilities committee will actually give the board an update presentation just to keep them abreast. Maybe you won't learn anything new from that because you attended this. You can speak at that meeting if you'd like the larger board to hear your concerns. The next night is the facilities committee meeting. We've described that. After that meeting, the committee should be ready to make a recommendation to the larger board early January. So that's when the actual Board of Education will take up the argument from there, and I should say debate, let's say. And those meetings will be public. You can comment before and after, and I would expect that would happen over the course of 2 meetings in January, where a vote happens at the second meeting. So ample opportunities to offer your input, not just limited to tonight. Yeah.
My name is Rich Ward. I've been a physical education teacher in Cornwall for 33 years. The proposal that Mr. Carnwright presented, he presented that to me the last few days as well. And I spoke to most of the head coaches. So if we look at the head coaches in the program, you have 2 soccer head coaches, boys and girls, a football head coach, 2 track head coaches, boys and girls. I didn't talk to the winter coaches because I don't think we're adding another gym, right? For basketball or wrestling. But I did speak to both lacrosse, boys and girls. So you're talking about 7 head coaches. I talked to Ben Smith, Karen Breckbeal. I talked to Matt Quick, who's not the head coach, but does a tremendous amount of work as the head coach and has talked about field use with the soccer. I sent Ms. Maureen Elsholtz an email. I'm waiting on her response. I talked to Ryan Baldock, and Ryan told me that he talked to Dave Foyer. you're talking about 6 of the head coaches that all said that they were willing and wanting to go with the proposal that Mr. Carnwright presented, with both fields and keeping the main complex at the middle school. So I wanted you to know that we are on board, and we want to thank everybody for their time and their effort. I know this is not an easy decision, but there has been some communication amongst coaches, not so much from the administration down with the coaches, but we have talked amongst ourselves.
Thank you.
And I thank you for that.
Great, all right, I'm gonna just ask. Sorry?
Can I say something?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So,
And then one more, and then we'll wrap, yeah.
my name's Tom Molfeld. I'm a community member, but also on the facilities committee. So, Rich, I appreciate the information you gathered because I think it's very helpful. That proposal is one that I've also presented to the facilities committee. So my expectation is when we meet on Tuesday, that we will look at that scenario. And as Harvey mentioned, what we need is a very detailed breakout, because then you can mix and match things and know, hey, we can take this out, we can leave this in, because I think that proposal is the one. I think we've got to remember too, while I hear what everyone in the community is saying, the kids are the people that we should be thinking about. I'm a parent of 3, that's my main concern, so I want to make this work more than anything. If you've seen my Facebook page, you know that I care about athletics and I'm passionate about it. So I hear what you're saying. I think it's important. And we're going to run these numbers to get something to work. And I can promise you that as a member of the committee. So thank you.
So, Tom Fanning. Thanks a lot, Tom, because I'm waiting 2 hours to say exactly what you're saying. So when you look at this, and we talk about taxes, right? And I have this argument with my mom all the time. We pay high taxes in Cornwall, but let's be sure to understand they're high property taxes. We don't pay high school taxes. So when we constantly reference taxes, I'm a taxpayer. I live in town. I've lived here, I'll be 50 February. So I understand the impact in high taxes, but I think the focus should shift to, just like Tom said, it's about the educational process. It's the students that are involved. And I think that's why you're getting questions about, did you ask the students, athletes? Were they involved in the process? Because yes, it impacts the community, but I think we're disconnected from the community. Like Mr. Carnwright said, a lot of the work, especially for us at the baseball field, that was donation. That was communication. That was going to Local 5 or Local 17, asking questions, going to a kid who played for me who worked at Federal Block and getting all the dugout stuff. That I think is so important in the process. It's the fabric of community that is disconnected from what we're trying to do. There is, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no impact based on this vote to taxes, correct? Okay, so we keep referencing it, but that's not the issue. I think the issue is, where are we putting this field? So that's debatable, and that can continue to be debated, and obviously it's going to happen at the facilities committee and at the board, but the focus, I believe, is what is best, most impactful for students? What's best for the student population? And when you have references of coaches and stuff, those are the ones that need to be asked the questions. Those are the ones that they're doing it every single day. They're doing it 12 months a year. So I just, like I said, thanks a lot. I've been waiting 2 hours, and and it's exactly right, though. I mean, my first question when I wanted to ask was, can we just get the hard numbers in comparison? Because to me, if it's my opinion, we do, like you said, Mr. Greg, now you need 2 fields. Just in terms of scheduling, but is that a pipe dream? I don't know, because the numbers should be able to dictate if that's possible or not. And that's what I was going to say. Can you just put the numbers side by side? Because if it's not realistic, you can't do it, then you go to the debate where the field goes. But there should be 2, I believe.
I just want to do one more plug for watching what goes on with the facilities committee, because I would be remiss. This isn't the first time the coaches were surveyed, so I do need to make that point. We have a teacher on the committee whose job is to connect with staff and get feedback across all buildings and things of that nature. And then 2, just watch any meeting that involved athletics, and we did do side by side. I stood and ran a session where it was what are the pros and cons of every scenario, and it's listed. We were listing parking at one place versus another. So just go back. Don't take my word for it. Just watch any facilities committee meeting where we've really engaged in this deeply. Again, it's just no easy answer. So tune in on Tuesday. Our architects and our construction manager has been following our directives, which is refine this as the committee gives direction. So if there's no clear-cut direction from the committee, it's hard for them to really refine those numbers, but we're at a place where on Tuesday we feel that they'll have the most complete picture. But again, the committee's worked too hard for us to kind of gloss over. There have been surveys out to key folks. I expressed the rationale of why not students yet, because we just, facilities committee will tell you, we just brought athletics back onto the table. Football, I know you all know this very well, that we were at a point 2 meetings ago where we said, we don't have the money to do anything with athletics. There's too much that needs to be taken care of with infrastructure. But then with some careful work with Walter Moran, our construction manager and the like, they really start to think of a long-range plan of how can you take care of numerous things, knowing that the high school is going to be paid off in a certain amount of time. So that's another key date of where we could actually use more money to take care of some things. So it's really important to understand kind of the process that we've been under. And I'll say again, just 2 meetings ago, the facilities committee was at a point where we're like, we just don't see it. I'm not sure we can do anything athletics because there's too much to do with the infrastructure of our building. So it is a process. It's going to continue on Tuesday, so please tune in.
All right, I think that's a wrap. So thank you everybody for coming out. 6:30 CES gym, and you can follow on the the YouTube live stream for the facilities committee. Sorry? Ideally, it will work. Yes, thank you.